businesses don't think of, business intelligence or quantitative analytics as what they need to help them perform. So we oftentimes try to talk about it as it's a business intelligence tool for you. And what we mean by that is that it's the same data that big businesses use. Starbucks, McDonald's, Amazon, Walmart, they're using this type of information to optimize the way that they make decisions for their businesses. But now we're providing it in a way that's available 24/7, when a lot of you may not be able to traditionally help businesses, in a format that's usable for them to start that first step in either analyzing their existing business or plan for the new business for entrepreneurial activities. And again, it's really key that it's available 24/7 because a lot of entrepreneurs are planning their businesses after hours on the weekends because that's when they have the time to engage in that type of analysis. They're too busy during the day providing their product service or working in their existing job. So this gives them entree into planning and studying and analyzing their performance or understanding how their industry would work at a time that works for them. We need to make it simple to use. So one of the things you may ask about is, NAICS, SIC, clusters, and things of that nature. We don't do that because 95% of small businesses don't know what NAICS or SIC codes are. And even if they know what they are, they may not know what theirs is. So we use simple English, right? If you're a restaurant, you're a restaurant. If you're a tire shop, you're a tire shop. You just type it in, and we do have heuristic algorithms for search. So if you put in auto, you'll get car and things of that nature. And then the last thing is that this is a starting point for a lot of businesses. So we have a report creator that can take any of the information that you see online and then take that and put that into a paper format so that they can collaborate with you, with the SBDC, with the research librarian, with their partners, investors, banks, whatever it may be. I want to talk about a little the context in which SizeUpDelaware is operating. So these are new business formations in the United States. And you see this little dip right here. That was the start of the pandemic. We thought that was the trend. But as you can see, we are having a surge of entrepreneurship that is unprecedented in the history of not just the United States, but also the Northeast and specifically in Delaware as well. And you can be like, oh, it's going up and down. But even though the trend is up and down, you can still see that the level of new business formations are still unprecedented for the past 2 decades. And so that's why this tool is so important, is because it can give people information that they previously didn't have. And why does that matter? Because this is the first year survival. These are the first 5-year survival rates for most new businesses. So at the end of 5 years, 50% of new businesses would fail. However, when we look at why they fail, you can see that, and I'm rounding here, about 2/3 of businesses fail because they are not prepared. Only 1/3 of businesses fail what's due to a natural death. So a natural death is you're selling the wrong product at the wrong time. You're selling horseshoes when people have moved to cars. Or you're trying to rent movies and DVDs when people are moving to streaming services. If you're looking for a more modern example, for all of you who are not going to the Blockbuster on Friday nights, but just turning on Netflix to see what's there. So the natural deaths are, largely unavoidable, but the other ones that we're looking at, the 2/3, it's oftentimes because they hire too much because they don't know what would be typical for their industry. So they're overstaffed and their burn rate's too high, or perhaps they don't hire enough. And they actually have very low staffing compared to what we require of a typical business, and they just can't meet customer service needs when they launch their business. And if you can imagine those 1 or 2 star reviews for, say, a retail organization, it's hard to recover from that. And so maybe you're paying too much, maybe whatever important factors, key performance indicators for your business aren't fully understood, the application can give you the opportunity to understand that. So SizeUp, while it's intended for small business, it actually can work at whatever level people are interested in. So it can go from really, really large category to niche industries. So you can look at all restaurants, or you can look at Italian, or you can look at pizza. And it's not just about retail. You could look at, say, automotive, vehicle maintenance, or you could just look specifically at motor repair. Whether it's manufacturing or plastics or plastic foam or healthcare. You could look at all healthcare services or just hospitals or just lab tests and x-rays. And the nice thing about the tool is it's not just limited to industries from top to bottom, but you can also do the analysis. While the analysis will always start in the state of Delaware, in one of the 3 counties, it can extend to whatever people think their trade area is. So if they want to do analysis on the metro area or the state or the Northeast corridor, you can essentially change and configure the analysis to whatever you think your trade area is. So that is just kind of a quick overview of what the tool is. And now what we're going to do is show you the tool. And we're going to walk through it a little bit differently. I'm not just going to demo the tool. I'm going to talk about why I'm choosing some of the things I'm choosing. And if someone wants to go ahead and shout out suggestions or type them out, I'm happy to use those. So you'll find the SizeUpDelaware site and landing page here at the government website. Yes.
Mario, we're still seeing the PowerPoint presentation.
Well, then that's not very helpful, is it? Let me see if I can get Zoom to cooperate here for a second. Thank you, Armando. Okay, I stopped and now I restarted. Are you seeing
the landing page?
Awesome. Then we're exactly where we need to be. So this is the landing page. And one of the things Jessica can share with you is all of the information that you see here, the graphics, the text. If this is something that you want to put onto your own websites or your partner websites, you can access all of this and then replicate it to drive more of your local businesses to a tool that can help them succeed. You'll see that we can launch the tool right here. By clicking on that button, we get to the tool. As I mentioned, it's designed to be very simple. So we only ask 2 questions at the start, which is what industry someone's in and where they are either operating their business or where they're thinking about opening up their business. I tend to, when I'm demonstrating this part of the tool, there's actually multiple modules. I tend to focus on something that's non-controversial and easily understandable. So I don't go right into like biotech engineering or avionics or things. I tend to focus on retail when I'm doing these because everyone, has not worked in a manufacturing facility or not everyone has been a carpenter or a plumber or something. I'm assuming everyone's gone to a coffee shop. And so we can look at coffee shops, anywhere, but we can look in Georgetown and you can see it's just those 2 things that are required to get started. And then at that point, this is what's called the module chooser. And so this simply directs people to the type of analysis that they want to do. So if I were opening up a coffee shop in Georgetown, I might just want to know what's a typical coffee shop make in terms of revenue. So I might put in $1 million. And then within just seconds, we'll actually get an answer about what the average coffee shop is making in Georgetown. So we can see that the average coffee shop is making just about $1 million. And we can see information about what it's making at the city, county, state, national level. And it's as simple as if you're considering, multiple places, you can go ahead and switch to Wilmington or again, wherever else you want to look. You just either change the industry or you change the location just by clicking here on these 2 fields. So, maybe we are starting at a higher level and we're actually looking at all restaurants. We could find out that the average restaurant is making 1.5 million. As I mentioned, we could go to Italian and we can see that there's more money in fettuccine Alfredo and chicken Parmesan than other restaurants. So we can kind of focus in on exactly the type of revenue that we think we want to make for a given industry at whatever level we want. And what you'll see on all of these KPIs or benchmarks, KPI stands for key performance indicator, is the information both in a chart and a tabular view. So people could cut and paste this into Excel or a business, loan or whatever it is that they want to do. And then also a map of that revenue. So you can see areas where they're making more money in a given industry or less. So that can be really helpful in understanding hyper-local information relative to the industry, business, service that you're providing. There's a question about data. We'll definitely cover that later. So thank you for that question. So now revenue is just one part of the story. It doesn't tell the entire story. So it looks like, our revenue is fairly average for a coffee shop. Maybe we started this business in 2012. Maybe it's been a decade and we're trying to assess where we're going. So you're going to see the overall trends within a given industry. And this is really valuable because you may think, oh, well, there's a Starbucks in every corner. Is there still room for coffee shops? And the answer is you can see that people are still opening up coffee shops. Even during 2021, when the pandemic was still, happening, a new coffee shop opened in Wilmington, 10 in the county, 99 in the metro area, 20 in the state. So you can see the overall trends and understand whether your industry is really growing or maybe it's a shrinking industry. Maybe you're like, well, that's not a lot of coffee shop openings. Maybe I need to look more at offering food. And so you could pivot and start doing analysis on like a cafe or a diner to see if that's a better fit for your business model, the amount of capital that you have to start your business. So identifying industry trends can be really critical in terms of making a more optimal decision about whether you pivot or whether you, continue to operate in your existing business. We can also look at salary information. $20,000 may not seem like a lot of money, but you can actually say that's a very fair salary for a barista in the coffee shop industry. And we can look at number of employees. I think, let's say 7 people. That's, a small business. Well, it turns out that's in the context of data, a really small coffee shop. It's half the size of a typical coffee shop. And this is why context matters so much. So if you think about it before, we seemed like we were kind of a typical coffee shop, but now when we look at the number of employees have, the level of compensation that we're providing, we can actually see that we're 72% above average in cost effectiveness. We have a very cost-effective coffee shop. Maybe we are a specialty coffee shop, and so we have fewer employees that are experts, and we're charging more per cup. Maybe that's the story. And so we can understand how we're performing against our industry competitors. And you can see where people are making more or less money, within that category. We can also look at revenue per capita. So you notice these maps are different. Why are they different? One map is showing where the revenue is occurring. The other map is showing where the people live that are spending that money within that given industry category. So you can make a quick, at a glance, you can understand where those concentrations are. You may choose to visit coffee shops. If you're trying to compare yourself to another business in your industry, you might want to visit areas that are making more money to understand, is it a more dense area? Are they providing the product or service differently that's allowing them to generate more revenue? We can also look at local turnover. So imagine, if you will, that this is your average coffee shop. I think we saw 14 people. So you would expect to lose about 3 people per year in terms of average turnover for this industry. If you were losing 1 or 2 and you thought that that was a problem for your business, you're like, I have to recruit, retrain, this workforce. What you thought was a problem, actually, you're doing better than you thought objectively through the lens of data. So there's something about your culture, your compensation, your product or service that's allowing you to keep more than your fair share of your talented workforce. We also provide information about healthcare costs, which can sometimes be opaque for small businesses. They don't have, professional HR team telling them. They just know what they're spending. So it allows you to benchmark against other businesses in the state to understand what their average healthcare costs are. And we can also look at, say, workers' compensation to understand where we rank in terms of that particular category. And then there's a button right here called Summary View. The Summary View is really useful because it will give you a dashboard of all of your various benchmarks. And then if you're running through scenarios, maybe you're like, I'm doing really well on cost effectiveness. I'm ready to open up, for more hours, for example. And so maybe you think that you're going to make another $250,000, but you're probably going to have to hire more people to do that. And so if you do that, as you start to scale out, you can see what the effect might be on your cost effectiveness, where you go from 72% above average to 67%. And as I mentioned, you can take this information, go ahead and click on it, and then you can export everything that you've seen here, right, as a digital format into a paper format that you can then include into any documents that you need to prepare. Or maybe you want to slice and dice this information in Excel, or create an investor packet because you're looking to get investors to establish the next parts of your expanding coffee empire. So this is the first of 4 modules in SizeUpDelaware. It's the My Business or benchmarking tool. It allows businesses to understand how they're performing against existing businesses in their industry, or to prepare to understand how they would need to perform to meet or exceed what a more typical business would be doing in that given industry. So let's pause at this point and ask if there are any particular questions other than the one that we have from Rick. Okay, I don't see any. Again, please feel free to come off mute if you can. So Rick, I'm going to go ahead and answer your question. And then I'm going to have to say, you're going to have to go to Imagination Station for some of this, because I'm going to talk about data that you haven't seen yet, but I think it's valuable to talk about it. So the information that you're going to see here, and I'm just going to just briefly go on to the next page, is all of our business information is updated quarterly. So that's all of the businesses that you would see on the map, and then also all of the calculations that are drawn from those businesses, the revenue, the number of employees, so that information is updated annually. Some of these KPIs, it comes from different data sources. So I'll go ahead and share with you this information to provide a little bit of context. And then we'll talk about how that works across different modules. So you saw that we had certain benchmarks. Let me see. I'm not sure if Zoom is fully caffeinated this morning. Are you seeing my PowerPoint right now? Okay, yes. Excellent. So we tend to think about data. We have hundreds of different data sources, and it depends on what you're looking at. So I think turnover rates comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Healthcare costs come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. You get the idea, different sources. So we tend to think of things as buckets. These are the buckets that we think that you're most interested in. And so if we look at the buckets, the industry, which are the individual businesses, the demographic and geographic, this is kind of where it comes from. So industry information is updated quarterly. It depends on the industry that you're in. You know, if you're an attorney or a CPA, you have to pass the bar exam or your CPA exam. For public companies, including those in the Chancery Court that we've heard all about, thanks to Elon Musk and Tesla and Twitter. As you know, those have to actually file quarterly stock reports. And so it depends on the type of business and industry where some of that information may come from. So professional licenses, county courthouse filings, annual reports. We have over 14 million businesses updated quarterly. Now, when I say it's updated quarterly, there's a lag. So it could be anywhere from 3 months to 9 months when we identify new businesses or businesses that have gone out of business. Some of the other KPIs that you saw or benchmarks on the first page come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Census, Labor Statistics. You get the idea. When we get to the demographic, consumer expenditures and business and workforce, and I know you haven't seen that yet, that comes from modeling based on the census, but it's modeling that's done on it. And that modeling is updated every 6 months with 5-year projections. So, you'll be looking at 2022 and then 2027 projections, presently. And so each part of the application is updated at different times. So while that is a broad strokes overview of very complex issues, we also have white papers. So if you want your data scientist to read stuff by our data scientists, we welcome you to look at that. And so we'll start looking at some of those data points right now, because I'm going to turn this over to Armando, where he's going to go over the next module, which is the competition module. Rick, yes?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry, when you asked earlier, it broke up, so I didn't know that you were addressing my question. I was interested to know where the revenue data came from for, say, coffee shops particularly. It's always been problematic for me to advise small businesses about revenue because one of the major sources of revenue was derived from shopping mall data, because those leaseholds are required to report annual sales to the developer. But our downtowns don't behave like shopping malls. And so it's an apples and donuts kind of comparison. The context that I'm interested in, if the revenue really is regionalized, I often regard rent as a function of revenue. So when I'm trying to determine if a rent structure is sustainable for a particular entity, I'm looking for sales data to project a sales and look at the ratio of rent to sales to see if it's within the parameters I think would be sustainable. So I guess my question is, does does this data drill into regional and more downtown settings, or is it more of a bellwether with a painting with a broader brush, but not the little brush?
Sure, I understand your question. And similar to our application, I'm going to answer it in different ways. So one, in terms of the benchmarking data, it is based on political geographies. So when we say this is what a coffee shop in the city of Wilmington is making, or Georgetown, or Dover, or Rehoboth Beach, or wherever, it is all of those businesses, right? And then divided by that number of businesses within that political geography. So county, metro. We don't distinguish at this time. Notice I'm saying at this time, between your Starbucks that may have 40 employees and your mom and pop restaurant that may have like 3 or 4. Okay. It is something we're working on. It is a complex issue. And people who are far smarter and better looking than I am are working on it. And we're hoping to be able to provide that level of analysis where you can say, hey, I'm a small business, I'm a medium or large business within my industry category. So, a 14-person coffee shop in Wilmington is typical. However, I bet you would find out that, a 14-person manufacturer is really small, where they'd probably be in hundreds or thousands of jobs. So we are trying to provide context around that. It is something we're aware of, thanks to input from people like you, and it's something that we continue to work on. What I will say is we advise Jessica and her team when we provide updates. So make sure that you're subscribed to their newsletter, their updates, because as we make improvements to the application, and matter of fact, Armando could probably show you some of these, we let them know, and then that information then filters out. So for example, when we get to the competition page, you're going to see that we've now identified women and minority-owned businesses. So you can actually look at that if that's something that you or the other businesses they want to buy from a woman-owned business or a minority-owned business, that's something that they can do. That was a new change. The heat mapping that you're going to see on the competition tool momentarily, you used to have to drill down, 8 levels deep sometimes to find snacks and non-alcoholic beverages. Now you can just type in the category that you want to see. So Armando will cover that in the next module. And so in terms of your question, I would try to get to the answer that you're looking for by using the benchmarking tool, looking at the competition tool to see the actual businesses in that geography. And so you could say, oh, it's Starbucks, or no, it's Joe's Coffee Express. And so I can kind of see the concentration of smaller and bigger or more national chain businesses. And then I would also look at the demographic module to see the typical type of customer that I'm interested in. Am I catering to 20 to 30-year-olds or women or people with college degrees, whatever it may be, and overlay that data also on the advertising tool, which can show you underserved areas. So you can come to some of those conclusions by layering on answers or data from different modules of the tool. And so I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that, and then we can certainly revisit that during the Q&A session. So, but those are fantastic questions, and I really appreciate you asking that. So Armando, I'm going to turn this over to you, and then I will play flight controller for any questions that are coming in. And again, if we could just show, I don't know what category you were thinking about doing, but if we can find a woman or minority-owned business just to show them that info card, that would be great, Armando.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Rick, I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Mario. Appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like Mario said, go straight to the website, delaware.sizeup.com, and we can go ahead and put that in the chat for you guys so that you guys can view it at your leisure. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the competition tool. I have not had breakfast yet, so I'm going to go ahead and go with breakfast restaurants. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to Dover, Delaware. And like Mario said, those are the only 2 things that you need to get started. We've got this great module chooser here where we can go directly into what we're looking for. So we originally went into the My Business module. Now we're going into the competition module. Gives a much more holistic approach as a business to know where and who your competitors are, customers, and also to discover new suppliers. So if I'm a breakfast restaurant, I want to know, who am I competing with? Am I competing with mom and pop shops? Am I competing with big box stores? And we can see here that it gets filled out. It always gets filled out, the top 10 first, and then you can continue, just like Google pages, continue to the third, fourth, fifth page. And we can see here we are competing with some mom and pop shops. We're also competing with big box chains. And we can get, if we feel that we are competing with more than that, we can always stack industry on industry. If we feel like we're also doing lunch industries, we can go ahead and stack on that, and we can continue to add to who we feel we're competing with and get a view of all of that competition. Now that we know our competitors, of course, we always want to know where our prospective customers could be. So this is originally left blank because who's going to know the customers better than you, the entrepreneur, the business owner, right? If I'm a breakfast restaurant, I'm thinking I'm going to look for industries that do business meetings, lunch or breakfast meetings, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to government officials. Let's see, executives, maybe.
Sorry to interrupt, Armando. I think like me, you're blind, and so you're doing your presentation on your big monitor. Could we switch it to the small monitor? Some people are having trouble seeing the text.
Yes, let's see.
You guys just don't know how blind Armando and I are, because we're wearing our contacts today because we want it to look beautiful for you all. But normally we're wearing glasses. So.
All right, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay.
So now we're in full mobile version, but the nice thing is you can actually see that our application has what's called responsive design. So if you are meeting with local businesses, like literally on your phone or on your iPad, you can see that our application will reformat itself so that it takes on a different design that you can use on a mobile tool. So don't think that you have to be in your office to use the tool. We have stories from economic development agencies and chambers who have literally been at an ice cream shop and they think the ice cream shop's fabulous that happened here in Austin. We have a local ice cream place called Amy's. It's our own, gourmet local. And the city economic development director asked them about how they were doing and pulled up the information in real time with them. So please do know that you can do this. And yeah, that's looking a lot larger, Armando. So I think you're all set if you can just use that screen.
Perfect.
Okay. Back over to you.
All right. Yes. Yeah, it looked a little weird when I was turned the other way. So made a small adjustment. Okay, so now we've created a prospective customers list. And just like Mario stated earlier, we can go ahead and always export this at any time during any part of our discovery of this. And if you feel there's even more customers, and I want to point out that this is a business to business scenario. So we are putting, stacking all the types of business. And if we want to identify specific businesses, we can also do that here as well. If we are interested not just in the business to business, we can look at consumer spending over here. And we do have this great search feature to where you can look directly for what you are going for. So we're talking about breakfast and brunch. So we are going to overlay this heat map with consumer spending. And what's great about this is you will get block group level data right here. And then you can see the range and the legend here. Zoom out and you can get another view of the land. And then last but not least in this module is the suppliers. We need to get our supplies from somewhere. And a lot of times entrepreneurs and small businesses don't know more than a few places to get their supplies from. So this can potentially help you negotiate prices, find closer shops, cut costs. So Let's see. Let's go ahead and start typing in breakfast restaurants. Nothing seems to fit. We are also a restaurant. This is what I love about our heuristic search. You start searching something and eventually you're going to find what you're looking for. So restaurants, equipment, and supply wholesales. That sounds like a winner to me. And then it starts to populate. And then we can start to see where different suppliers are. So, and if we think maybe that might not be enough for us, let's go ahead and continue again. Restaurants, equipment, and service repair. We definitely will need that in the future as well. Continue to populate, and we continue to build our list and our report. So that there was the competition module, where we're able to find who exactly we're competing with, where our customers are, and discover new suppliers. Before I move on, I would like to point out that every module has this I button here. I know that sometimes during these presentations, it feels like you may be drinking through a fire hose as far as information is concerned. So if you press this button, you'll get a 1 minute or less video of exactly how to, a walkthrough of how to use the module that you're in. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause for to see if anybody has any questions.
I do quickly. So, are you able to filter by, like, let's say we wanted to just search in a certain county or something like that so that we could export a report? Are you able to filter by location in that way for this, like, part of the report?
So for this part, we do it by city. As far as I know, that's the only filter that we have, correct, Mario?
Well, so let me explain how this tool works. So the answer is you're always going to show the 10 closest business to whatever the geographic center is of that city. There may be 100 businesses or 2. And so what happens is then we expand out from there in radiuses. And so you can see, if you go to the whole list, you'll see, whatever, 500. The answer is no. You can export 10 at a time. And the reason why is because, as I mentioned, we have hundreds of data partners and we have to go to the lowest common denominator. So if you were looking to get that information, then I guarantee that InfoUSA, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, DataViz, they all would love to sell you that information. So it is engineered to show the information, but in groups of 10, so that our partners can still send the data if a business needs that level. So yeah, I'm sorry, you're still gonna have to keep your data view subscription. So yes, but the entire set is there. And one of the things that I should explain is if we went to a category like lumber mills, because maybe you have a furniture manufacturer who needs some northern Wisconsin pine. While all of the data points are going to start at the local area, if they move the map up to Wisconsin, they can actually see those data points and then click on them. So it's whatever the trade area is. The problem with zooming out like this, if you're in a really dense category, is eventually it just looks like you have chicken pox, right? Because there's thousands of coffee shops. And so it behooves you to move the map and then zoom into the area if you know that there's a supplier there. Or perhaps you just know you need to local source and you need to go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You can just zoom in there and then see it. So the analysis is nationwide, including Alaska and Hawaii, but it always starts from the point that they put in. Does that answer your question? Okay, great, fantastic. There's a question about international suppliers or competitors. No, the answer is that we've normalized the data, and so it is restricted to the 50 US states. It's something that we would consider in the future, but we have to be able to map that data so it matches up. And that's not something that we have available yet. Probably Canada next. Mm-hmm.
In the customers.
Sorry, continue, Rick.
Yeah, in the customer area, is there a way to look at drive time?
But as you keep anticipating the module we haven't seen yet, Rick. So this time I'm just going to have to ask you to be patient, and I promise we will get there. So yes, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and move on to advertising unless I see anything else? But yes, Canada would likely be the next area that we expand to. It's one of those things that we evaluate.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your questions, and we appreciate the interactivity. Yes. So the next module is the advertising module. Small businesses know that they need to advertise. I mean, we live in the age of social media. We're in the digital age, but we know that the advertising budgets aren't exactly huge. So sometimes what you get is this shotgun approach where you advertise to everybody and you don't really target anybody specific. So with this module, we like to give an ROI for small businesses, and we give you multiple ways to approach this based on whatever your needs are. So, like if I was a embroidery business, or yes, if I was an embroidery business, maybe I am looking for my next potential client or customer to find, right? And as an embroiderer, I'm looking for total amount of employees. So that's one of the things that we do here. You could also look at doing restaurants. So that would be another one that we would use total employees for. Or if I am instead something like getting into the beauty salon business, because I have a bunch of beauty products, then I could also search for that and look for different beauty salons as well. Maybe I'm looking to get into untapped markets, so I can search by underserved markets. So we're going to go ahead and go with that example. But the other categories that you can approach this by is total revenue, revenue per capita, underserved markets, average revenue, total employees, and household income. And we do this in two different approaches. We do this by demographic characteristics and industry characteristics. So initially we have 7 zip codes targeted, and we've got the population, revenue, and revenue per capita highlighted here and in order. In this case, revenue per capita is in ascending order. So we have 7 results. Maybe our budget isn't quite that large and we need to filter further down. So we come here and we have the search distance of 10 miles, and that's given us 7 zip codes. If we really wanted to, let's say we were a niche comic book store and we were looking to ship some of our supplies throughout the nation, we could search nationwide, and we can see the top zip codes for whatever it is we're looking for. If we were a niche comic book store that dealt in certain types of figurines, collectibles, that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and filter back down to 10 miles. So if I wanted to filter it a little bit further, I'm going to say I want the household income to be making at least 50,000, and I want to make sure that those people are spending that money as well. I want to make sure that those in that particular zip code are old enough to be using these beauty products. So let's filter that up to 1920, and maybe I've discovered that I get a lot better business when the bachelor's degree is higher. So I'll put that percentage up to, I don't know, 16. And now we have filtered down to 5 results. And we can see that not all these results are treated equal. It is color coded for higher intensity, the red being the most intense, and yellow, the lighter color, being the least intense. And this is all based on the filters that we put so far. And here you can see that based on the filters that we put, an untapped market could be right here in this 19962 zip code, and then followed by the 977 zip code. Now, if we wanted to do a different approach and we weren't going directly to consumers, maybe we thought about going looking directly at the businesses, the beauty salons themselves. Maybe at that point, we'll want to look at more revenue per capita, see the quality of those dollars being spent. Then we would go ahead and do that approach. And then we'll go back to our filters. We'll go ahead and clear these filters, reset, and then go down here to the industry performance. And we'll want to filter maybe by total annual revenue. We want to make sure that, you know, they've got plenty of clients, they've got steady business going. So we're going to go to at least 100,000. We know that with beauty supplies and beauty salons, most of the time baristas, what I don't remember what they're called exactly, but the salon artists, we know that a lot of times they are the ones that are going to be really promoting the products. We want to make sure that they have at least 10 employees or more. And then based on those filters, we've gotten back down to 5, and we've seen which ones are the most intense. And we can see that in this particular case, when we're looking at industry, the 901 zip code has come out on top, and also the 934. Unfortunately, they're not as close as we'd like to be, but 1 and 3, 904 is. So if we're trying to stay in a close proximity to one another, those are the two that I might target. And it looks like they are not so different as far as revenue per capita. So if I'm really looking to maximize my advertising dollars, I would want to target these zip codes for advertising. Now, this tool doesn't show you where you should advertise, or sorry, where, that's exactly what it does. How it doesn't show you how to advertise. So if you like to do physical advertising, billboards, bus stops, you can absolutely do that. Or you can do social media. You can filter by these zip codes and target those particular areas. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and summarize that here. That was the advertising tool, being able to optimize and target your advertising and marketing, making sure you get the biggest bang for your buck as a small business, and really capitalizing on your marketing budget. I'm going to go ahead and pause there for questions, and then if I don't see any, I will ask.
And actually, just because we've answered so many questions, and I do want to make sure there's still time for Q&A and wrap up at the end, I'm going to just go ahead and move to the next module and just kind of summarize and say, there's lots of different use cases for this. You can do business to business, you can do business to consumer. And back to one of Rick's questions or points earlier, here, if we're doing underserved markets, we're actually analyzing business revenue, which is updated every 3 months, with consumer expenditures, which is updated every 6 months. So it's a hybrid analysis. So you can see there can be some really deep integration between data sets, and it just depends on what you're looking at. We're going to show the 4th module, which is the demographic module. Because we're a little bit short on time, I'm just going to say one of the types of analysis you can do is by political geography, right? City, county, metro. You've seen that before. I'm just going to go ahead and skip over it because I don't think that's how businesses think. To Rick's point, they do tend to think about drive time or radius reports. So if we were interested in and you can see I'm completely pulling up a random address, 1313 North Market Street in Wilmington. And if I wanted to understand what the demographic overview is, so this is not generic analysis. We're saying this is 10 minutes from this area. So parts of Pennsylvania are included, right? You get the idea. We could do the same thing with drive time, but perhaps, so on the demographic category, you can see we're looking at gender, age, race, households, household income, labor force status, hundreds of categories, education levels. And those are really valuable for certain types of businesses in terms of identifying where they need to locate or where they need to recruit. Maybe we're actually that coffee shop or that embroidery business, and we're interested more in consumer expenditures. So I could, instead of doing miles, which you see here, we could do minutes. And now we're going to go ahead and get, instead of that perfect ring report, now we're getting this little polygon right here is how far you can get within 15 minutes. And we could look at concentrations of information. We could say, hey, I'm a restaurant. Show me how much people are spending, right? outside of home at the zip code level. And so now we're seeing areas, how much money is coming in, and then as a percentage of overall expenditures. You get the idea. I just want to make sure there's enough time for Q&A. We can dive in later, but I've showed you essentially for a place and then around an address. Let me show you the third type of analysis on this tool that I think is really cool. So this is within a boundary. So if you really think that you know your particular geography, whatever that may be, let's say that you're here on the more southern part of the state and you actually think you're going to be pulling in parts of Maryland or Washington. Again, you can draw whatever shape you want for whatever reason. A ferry line, freeway construction's a problem. All of a sudden, we created this little lobster claw shape here, and I'm going to select labor force analysis. And what we're going to find out is that within this specific shape, there are 19,133 businesses. That's and those businesses employ 202,119 workers. And we're going to break it down in terms of the size of the establishments by type. So if we're looking at the businesses, we can look here, or we may be more interested in the type of people working for those businesses. So you can see here that there's extraction and construction. Maybe I'm not interested in mining, all 125 miners, 0.06% of the workforce there, but maybe I'm building bridges, right, in high-rise buildings. So I could look at construction, but guess what? I'm actually not interested in general construction. So you can see in the same way that we went from restaurants to Italian to pizza, we can do the same thing with labor sheds. So now we're looking just at people who are working at heavy construction, 12,290 workers, and I want to get hyper local. So I was looking at the county level, now the zip code level. Now I'm going to dive in even deeper. I'm looking at neighborhood level information. I can see where the total number of heavy construction workers are, and then I can see as a percentage what they are of the workforce in that area. So there's hyper local information here by radius report, by drive time, or you can draw a shape because you know your particular area, trade area, labor shed, whatever it is. The tool can work for you in the way that you or the local business need to analyze their unique value proposition, marketing area, whatever it is, with the tool. Now, this is the least linear of the tools, I guess I would say. In the other ones, you kind of enter the information and you just get the result out. This one, you have to think a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to analyze. And you can even overlay information. So let's say that I really wanted to understand where I'm marketing to 30 to 39-year-olds, and I'm specifically focused on women. You can overlay each of these reports independently. And I'm targeting African-American women. Then you can go ahead and just turn these various switches on to understand the concentration of that unique demographic characteristic, that unique worker, that unique consumer that you're trying to target with this tool. So, and as with everything else, you can, of course, export that information then. So this is something, Caroline, you can do at that level. So this is a site-specific report. While it doesn't identify, that Oprah Winfrey lives here, you can see overall that there's African-American women with a high household net worth, who are college educated. But we don't identify individual households. It's always aggregate information. So we have about 6 minutes left. And we had some fantastic questions, but we want to make sure that we can at least answer them now, or we can certainly write them down and get answers to Jessica to share with you as we move forward. So please do come off mute, ask those questions. Some of you asked questions during directly to me during, and I responded back to you. So please check the chat. So if you have any questions, you can follow up with us. Any other questions? And Rick, hopefully we hit your drive time report ask.
You did. Just a real quick one. I don't know that it drills down this much, but is there, in many of our communities, there's an ebb and flow of daytime workforce population. Mm-hmm. In the city of Wilmington, there's a population proper, but there's also, because of the banking influences and such, a larger population by day that are being imported. Is there a filter that can track that?
Sure. So again, I can't answer your question directly because there isn't. But indirectly, what I would look at from that perspective, let's go to, you know what, let's do a 15-mile report, and let's go ahead and do consumer expenditures. I'm going to pick another address in Wilmington. So here, if I was doing consumer expenditures, and let's say I was running a bar, right? So let's go to alcoholic beverages. So I think where you can get to that answer is this is the revenue in those areas. So I went down to the block group level. So we're seeing revenue, or I'm sorry, this is average household spending. So these are the households spending that information. Here are the businesses receiving it. So I toggle between business revenue and then household expenditures to understand kind of that difference, right? So you may see a pizza restaurant that's a by the size place that's in downtown that's generating a lot of that revenue during the daytime, but then the household spending it might be in a different location. So I'd look at these different factors to understand, adjacent to your question, some of that information. So the answer may not always be directly in the place you're thinking about, but rather, you know, by layering on different points of data.
Derived, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to add to that, if you wanted to see a different approach to that question as well, or to add to it, you can also select the labor force report type and see which of those exist in that particular area or don't exist in that particular area.
And then, of course, you could overlay that. So you can see we're on dentists, but you get the idea. You could say, hey, here's pizza, and then I'm looking for expenditures, and I'm going to go ahead for lunch. And so you can see the difference between lunchtime expenditures and then dinner time or breakfast expenditures. All right. Anything else?
And if you don't have any questions at this time, like I said, I know that it's like drinking through a fire hose sometimes. Please email us at support@sizeup.com or email Jessica, and we'd be happy to respond.
Well, Jessica, unless you have any other closing remarks, I just want to thank everyone for investing their time to learn more about the tool and really how we think it's going to be a fabulous tool for your local businesses and for your ability to leverage your skill set to help them as they grow.
I don't have any other remarks or questions. I'm just typing my email really quickly in the chat. Everyone should have it who is on, but just in case you don't have it, I just put it in there. Thank you so much, Mario and Armando. This was really helpful. I hope everyone who joined us found it helpful as well.
All right. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.